So Shannon,
Yes,
there
sir.
is a new golf tour on the horizon, and it is being funded by some serious Saudi money.
Oh,
And it
I
is
thought it was like a pitch and putter or like through the windmill or something.
well, they have that too, but we're not going to discuss that today.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we are. But there is a new tour that is being funded by with Saudi money.
Mm-hmm.
It is it's not exactly Greg Norman's world tour, but it's essentially the Saudis bought the Asian tour and now are recruiting golfers to play there. And the kind of money they're offering is big.
And Greg Norman is involved.
And Greg Norman is one of the, well, he's the CEO or whatever.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about it. Former tour player and our pal Richard Zokol will join us. We'll discuss this new golf venture and maybe Pebble Beach too. And we'll commence after these messages. And we are back. It's McCowan. It's Shannon here, the Bob McCowan podcast. Heard anywhere you get your podcasts, or if you wish, on Sirius XM channel 167, if you prefer. Our friend Ian Leggett could not join us today, so that provides more time to chat with Richard Zokol, who is...
We didn't want Leggett after all anyway, did we?
Lego's a pant load.
Do you think my wife would be happy with that question, giving me more time to talk?
No, I'm pretty sure she'd disagree with that statement. But
that's right.
We could ask her. I mean,
yeah. He says, stop giving your opinions.
Well, we're going to ask for a whole bunch of them today.
All right.
We come from kind of the same era. I grew up wanting to be a PGA Tour player, and of course, it never happened. It wasn't because I had a lack of talent; it was because I had no talent. And you obviously made it, but that was a time, Zokol, where the European Tour was kind of like the American Hockey League to the National Hockey League.
Right.
It wasn't where you went if you had the highest aspirations. It's where you went if you were young and weren't good enough.
Didn't make it on your first try.
Or didn't make it.
Or third try.
Yeah. Yep. And that's the way it was. Now it is. And it was also a time where there were almost no European players playing on the PGA Tour, right?
Right.
So if they were going to play somewhere, well, they'd play it closer to home.
Yep.
And then there was this evolution of European tours getting better, or European players getting better, and starting to come across the pond.
Was that just as a point of emphasis? Was that Seve, or who was that?
Oh, I don't know if Seve would have been the first. He was the first guy, I guess, to
win
really make it.
The Masters.
So, but I mean, so to create that awareness that, hey, the Europeans are playing better golf, we better start paying more attention. I thought it was Seve.
Yeah, and it started a pipeline, Langer and Wisdom, and the
Olafable.
Olafable, exactly, and a pipeline. And you're right, Bob. It did kind of give some foundation to the European Tour.
So that's not really the case anymore. There are American players who do go over and play on the European Tour on occasion for whatever reason. Guys will go over now and play the Scottish Open the week before the British Open, just to kind of get used to it. And that didn't happen very often. When Arnold Palmer went over, I mean, he didn't go play anyplace else. He just played the British Open.
They had to take a boat over.
Arnold? No, Arnold had a jet.
No, I'm talking about in the 50s and 60s.
Well, of course. You mean the Bobby Jones era?
Bobby Jones, Walter Hagen, even Ben Hogan. I bet you Ben Hogan took a boat.
Yeah,
probably did. Anyway, that has all kind of changed. And a sort of an alliance has now been forged. Our mutual friend, Keith Pelley, who took over as the commissioner of the European Tour, I guess it went about 6 or 7 years ago. As part of his mandate, forged a tighter relationship with the PGA Tour. And for the purpose of just discussion here, not to yak on too long, but European Tour purses are a fraction of the PGA Tour. What, 50, 60, 70%? Something in that neighborhood, I think.
Yep.
But there's now a relationship. So they're not beating on each other's door. And now along come some Saudis who have thrown a crap load of money into the pot and essentially want to take the Asian tour, which is really not even a B tour, it's a C tour.
Which they have done. They have taken it.
Yeah.
They own it.
And raise the ante and maybe raise it even higher than we might have expected.
Yes.
And players are being offered all kinds of money, just appearance money or guaranteed money.
Yeah. And remember who their, what would you describe him as? Their consultant? Who's their consultant?
Greg Norman.
Yeah.
He's the CEO.
Yeah. He's been on this worldwide tour thing for a long time, right?
Yeah. He brought the possibility of a world golf tour. He partnered with Rupert Murdoch back in the early 90s. He presented it to the PGA Tour. They shut him down and started their own, which became a series of 5 or 6 world golf championships to expand. So Norman, I think, was a little upset that he got left out of the deal.
So there's a lot of money being thrown around. If you were still playing, would it entice you?
Well, it's really interesting, and you have to say it would have to. You would have to look at it. I think that's been a common thread amongst the top 30 players. And keep in mind, this week that aren't in the AT&T, 30 of the top players are in playing the Saudi Invitational, and it's reported today that Bryson DeChambeau was offered $135 million. I know yesterday Ian Poulter was reportedly to be offered 22 million euros. It's fascinating to watch what's going to happen. They are getting the Saudi group is getting very much very good and excellent traction right now. And you know what? It's easy for a lot of us to say, well, all the negative things that you're hearing that are coming out of human rights issues that the Saudis are doing. But, if we're one to throw the first stone and not point the finger at looking at China and its involvement in its human rights, issues that fund all the manufacturing in China, like, where does this thing stop? But unless it's easy to say, oh, look at the greed that Phil Mickelson is having. Look how much money he's made, and he's being offered $100 million, and he's ready to jump ship to go to the Saudis. It's really, until you're in those shoes, it's really easy to speculate, and it's you won't know until you're actually in that position. And we know humanity likes the money, and I think more people than not would take the money.
Well, I'll tell you a story. I don't know about you. I turned on the Golf Channel this morning to see if the Saudi tournament was on the Golf Channel.
Yeah, was it?
And I did it out of interest. Mm-hmm. It wasn't, and mm-hmm. I don't know if they're carrying it. They may not be, because they have such a tight relationship with both the PGA and the European Tour, mm-hmm. that maybe they would, the PGA Tour would say, I don't carry that. That's, they're the competitors. But I turned on, Dick, to see.
I'm fascinated about what's going to happen. The traction is real. And, the thing I worry about, I personally don't want to see, is a dilution of product. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see a fraction of the players go over, or because, you want the best of the best to be in tournament play going against each other. Keep in mind too, is their new tournaments on the Asian Tour are going to be, created, and they're brand new. There's a massive amount of goodwill value that's in the PGA Tour. Like, let's take a look at the AT&T this week. Every year we open up to Pebble Beach, and it's got 70 years of history. And, Ben Hogan was played there, and the sponsorship has been in play for how many years? Man, oh man, that's and to have people competing on it. And I don't like seeing leaderboards that don't have brand value. I don't want it to look like the Corn Ferry Tour is in the top 10. I want to see the big names. And I think that's what everyone wants. And it's been lacking for many years. Back in the 90s, you see a leaderboard, and here's Ray Floyd. He's got 22 wins. You got Tom Watson. You've got Jack Nicklaus. You've got all these big names with massive brand value. And today, I dare you Bob and John to look at a leaderboard any given week in the last couple of years in the top 10, unless it's a US Open or Masters, you're not going to recognize 80% of those names.
Well, I'll go more than that. And I don't know whether this is true for you guys. I'll flip on the Golf Channel or NBC on a Saturday, for example. Thursday, Friday, I'll watch if I've got time, and and I know leaderboards bounce all over the place. Yep. By the time you get to Saturday, if there aren't 2 or 3 guys I'm interested on that leaderboard, click.
Off.
Yeah,
it's off.
And
why? Just so why is that though? Why has that happened? Is there just too many golfers?
Well, I think a number of things happened. Number one, that Tiger Woods went through a couple of decades and dominated everything, so players couldn't get those wins. Like, I did a comparison a few years ago. Like, if you click on in 1992, you click on any tournament in the Florida swing, Honda, Doral, Bay Hill, and you look at the top 10 in the leaderboard in 1992, man, you count up all the wins. I did this. Raymond Floyd has 22 wins. Tom Watson has 30 wins, and all these guys, and it added up to 97 wins in the cumulative wins in the top 10. Then I popped in a top 10 on that same event in 2020, and it came out to 14 wins. And I went, wow, that is just amazing. The brand value of Ray Floyd, everyone kind of, Ray Floyd's going up against Hale Irwin and Tom Watson and Tom Kite. And now you have, Adam Schenk and going up against whomever, pick a name, and you don't know who those names are. And I think the brand value in golf has accelerated, and equipment has accelerated, and it's getting into big time sports now. It's just changing. It's just a different game.
So you bring up a really interesting point in that we need name recognition, but not necessarily, and hear me out, but not necessarily great golf.
Well, great golf comes with it. I mean, if you're tuning in and to watching the leaders on Saturday and Sunday, those people they're the best of the best playing right now.
Yeah, but if you don't recognize the names, I mean, it's a chicken and an egg scenario. Sure, Bob's turning it off, but Bob's turning it off because he doesn't recognize those names, and those guys are hitting it stiff.
Yeah,
so that's.
But it's John. It's about name recognition, and I think it's that right. in any sport. Like, are you if I turn on a hockey game, to put it in your world, and there's somebody there who's a superstar who I haven't seen enough of, though I want to get a look at, I'm going to stick around.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And Connor McDavid, I'm an
example.
Exactly. I'm not much of a hockey fan these days, but if Connor McDavid's, I want to see what he's going to do. And then if there's and going back to the golf, if there's a no name at the top in the US Open, I'm going to tune in. I want to see how he does. But it's a US Open. If it's a match in Vegas between Bryson DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka, I don't care. I don't care how much money they make. There's no goodwill in that event. The only thing that would get me to watch those guys, I think we spoke about this, is if they put on gloves and got into a ring and they settled matters with their fists.
Oh no, apparently they like each other now, don't they?
Oh yeah, they get along fine.
Well, I used to be chagrined because back in the day, Nicklaus would only play 15 or 16. Remember when you had to play a minimum number of events on the tour? Yeah. I think he had to play 15. Yeah. And Nicklaus would play the bare minimum.
Yep,
sure.
And I mean, he was the greatest player in the world, probably the greatest player in history, depending on where you sit with Tiger.
Yep.
And I wanted to see Jack.
Sure.
And I was chagrined because he, once every 3 weeks, I got to see Jack.
Right. And there was talk, should we raise that to 15 to 20 so we can get more of Jack? You're right. Those things, though, slow play is a problem. There's all kinds of issues that are out there, but this topical one right now is literally, I think it's if they're able to, if the Saudi group is able to attract a significant amount of people, it will dilute the PGA Tour, and I just want to see the best people playing the best tournaments.
Well, and then you'd have to surmise that they will create a tour in North America too, right? That part of that new tour would have to be played here because there's so much more money in golf in North America.
I think what'll happen if the PGA Tour is like, if they see that they are forced to merge, then they'll do it. But if they feel like their loss is going to dilute their value to their sponsors and TV contracts and streaming contracts, like forget television now, it's all about streaming, and it may force a merger of the two to create some type of hybrid that will be more global than just in United States.
Well, Mickelson talked about greed.
Yeah.
Among the things he discussed, and he used it in the context. Let me read the quote.
Mm-hmm.
This is Phil Mickelson saying, "They also charge companies to use shots I've hit. And when I did the match, there have been 5 of them, the tour forced me to pay them $1 million each time for my own media rights. That type of greed to me is beyond obnoxious," unquote.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It raises this issue.
Hold on. Richard's acknowledgement of is more of a statement than anything else.
Well,
greed's a good question, isn't it?
Well, it's a very interesting one. It's not exactly black and white. And Phil probably could use a few bucks because he's lost a bit in the casinos, I think. But that aside, does he have any kind of case? Is it your perception that prize money, for example, the absence of appearance money on the PGA Tour, these are things that need to be addressed, that sponsors actually aren't paying enough to be aligned with these kinds of events? That, well, the FedEx Cup is going to go from 10 million to 20 million. This year, right?
Yep.
Where's that money coming from? I guess it's coming from FedEx, but it seems to me that if the PGA Tour is going to compete with the Saudis, they better start bumping the money that's available to the players in North America. Yes or no?
They already have. They've already started. I think that PIP program that they introduced in last September. I mean, Phil got $8 million because his social media reach was the highest level, and they paid, I think, 4 guys or 8 guys in it, but Phil took the lion's share of it, of $8 million. It's up to 50 million next year. The Players Championship is bumped to, I think, it's $20 million. So it's the richest event on the globe at this point. And so the PGA Tour has, and I think will have to continue to ante up dollars and pay their top players that move the needle appropriately, whatever their fair market value is. And I think that's absolutely going to be a byproduct of what this is all about. And it's just, we're going to see if, how many guys, see what kind of traction this is going to hit and how many guys are going to jump. So if a few guys jump, I don't think it'll do much, but say they get the lion's share of the top 15 guys in the world, it's really going to make an impact on the PGA Tour.
Do you think the PGA Tour should pay appearance money?
Well, I'm of the old school. Obviously, I would like to see there's great value and goodwill value in the fact that we are a sport that said, you only eat what you kill. So, everyone starts out zero and you're incentivized to perform and get rewarded. I like that. I hope that doesn't go away. Europe has always paid appearance fees, and it becomes political. And now, the money is getting so great, and players today are so wealthy. And so when you see a Rory McIlroy take his positions in his stance, and then you see Tiger, and then you see a Phil and a Bryson DeChambeau, every person has a different perspective. Like Phil's short on runway. He's 51. I think he's going to take a personal hit if he does go. I mean, I think, and so everyone makes their decisions based on their own principles. And we won't know them, and we won't know even that about ourselves unless we were offered the same. It's just a fascinating subject that's just going to give us more to talk about.
Well, you raised the issue of not having much runway left, and Phil is what, 50, 51 now?
51, yeah.
Yeah, Westwood is another guy that got offered some money, and he's in his late 40s. What do you think this does to the, well, I still call it the senior tour. They call it the Champions Tour now. Doesn't this have a, if they go that route, if, as you say, the older guys start looking at this and saying, well, yeah, I can compete on the PGA Tour, but I'm not likely to win very much. It'll
have an effect. Here's another one. Let's take Poulter. I mean,
Poulter's a great example. Yeah,
he's such a good example because he's got a lot to lose. They're what they're offering him 22 million euros. He's a certainty to create legacy. Yeah, he already has legacy as a Ryder Cup player. He's absolutely going to be a Ryder Cup captain, probably a couple of times. If he jumps, that's going to be taken away. That's going to be removed. He's not going to have that opportunity. So his dilemma is, does he take the cash or does he go for the legacy? That, and the thing is too, is you need to ask the question to each player, the amount that they're going to get, is it going to change their life? It might change Poulter's life.
Sure.
I don't know that it's going to change Phil's life.
Have you played with Poulter, by the way? Just
No.
as an aside.
Never played with him. No.
He had the worst reputation. I remember when he came out, because he thought he was going to be the guy that could unseat Tiger. He was as good as Tiger. He claimed, I think, at one point. I got a chance to play with him a few years ago, and I couldn't have had a better time.
Oh, he's a great guy. He's
really
a great guy.
Yeah,
I think he's an excellent guy. And if you get to know him, you break through that Ryder Cup facade, that front that he has. I think he's gonna be well liked by everybody.
You guys have me thinking about that Champions Tour, and there's not very many names on the Champions Tour anymore, really. Yeah. But I could see Bernhard Langer, even at his age, trying to find a way to.
If they offer him the money,
get to the tour. Yes, yeah.
Well,
because he can still hit the ball. He can he still grinds.
I was in Hualalai last week for the launch. I went there to introduce Mind Track to Mike Weir and his caddy, and to also Vijay Singh. So I spoke to Langer, and it's amazing what he can do. I mean, at his age, it really is, and I think it's really a good question of mind over matter and determination. And mark my words, Mike Weir is looking awesome. I think he can go out there and dominate. To jump off the subject on that, but I'm not sure. I think that Langer's principles, I don't think he'd do it. I don't think he'd jump.
Really?
I don't think.
It's not as if he needs the money.
Well, I think he's an extremely religious fellow.
Oh,
extremely religious, and I think that his principles would, he knows where he's been given a platform, the PGA Tour, and he's done very well by it. I think he's the person that just said, no, my time's up. I'm fine where I'm at, and I'm fine. I don't want to cross any lines. Right. That's what my guess is on him.
I got a question I don't know the answer to. I'm gonna wait, and we're gonna take a quick break and come back with Richard Zokol in a minute. Back after these. McCowan, Shannon, and Richard Zokol joining us to talk about this, golf in general, but this proposed new tour.
Super League.
Yeah, that's the phrase. What was the Asian Tour has now been essentially bought by a group of Saudis who have a few bucks, and they're throwing it around.
And let me jump in there for a sec. On the Asian Tour, the strategy behind them acquiring the Asian Tour is they already have world golf rankings established and connected to that tour and their events. So that is the means in which where top players can perform against a strong field and get exemptions into major championships. So it's a vehicle that transitions. So I think
so you can play on that tour and still go to the Masters.
Well, you can earn exactly.
You
could earn your way on.
If you were a brand new tour that was conjured up like a new company, it doesn't have official world rankings associated with it. So those players that play or that are members of that would dilute out of getting into major championships. They wouldn't be invited. They would be able to have access to them, but the Asian Tour does. It allows them because the world golf ranking system is based on other world ranking players that are in the field, and they automatically ratchet up or ratchet down based on the quality of field.
But Richard, in terms of golf, are we talking in comparison to other sports? And I know they're team sports. Are we talking the possibility of the AFL versus the NFL, the ABA versus the NBA? Are we talking?
Well, you never know how, and again, we're talking about the possibility if there was a need for a merger, that would be interesting. And maybe there is that. But one of the fascinating aspects that they're proposing, that Greg Norman is proposing, is this team aspect of it, more like an F1. And that's interesting. And that sounds fascinating. So I think a lot that's appealing. I think that's one way that they can expand and get viewer growth around the globe. But it's going to really determine how the PGA Tour feels the effects of this traction that the Saudi group is getting, and whether they want to talk and negotiate a merger, so they don't want to risk the downside of it of losing.
Just for the record, I couldn't be less interested in the team event.
No, I know.
And I think what they should do is look. Well, tennis tried to do it. World Team Tennis.
Well, but I mean, you like the Ryder Cup.
Different.
Yeah, it's different.
It's a totally different scenario.
Richard, you played in the Dunhill Cup. What was it like?
I loved it. I loved representing. Everyone loves to represent the thing is, we're representing your country.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're representing your country, and most people, Ryder Cup, these players don't profit from it. Well, they get
no, but
credit, charity money for their foundations, but they don't personally make money. And that's great. Like, everyone loves the World Cup in hockey and juniors and all that, because we love that.
Yeah.
But I don't know how they do it. I'm fascinated to learn how they do it, and whether it gets traction. Only the market will tell whether it gets traction or not.
Well, even team events. I mean, did you not compete in the World Cup? At some point and represent Canada?
Yeah. I played in 6 Dunhill Cups and 2 World Cups for Canada. Yeah, loved it. Love you as an aspiring. I think in any sport, you aspire to represent your country at the highest level.
Of course,
love it.
But the truth of the matter is that those events weren't really internationally successful. They never rose to the level of being interested, the public being interested in them.
Yeah, the World Cup in golf just was nothing. It ended. It used to be the Canada Cup back in the 60s.
Yeah, exactly.
And it just, it doesn't work.
I got another one for you. This is relating to players trying to decide whether to go with this new group and play whatever they call it, the Super League. What do you think the average guy gets in terms of personal sponsorship? How much is TaylorMade going to pay to use their clubs? How much do you get for the logo on your hat? How much do you get for something on your sleeve? Do you know what those? I know you know what the numbers were when you were playing. Do you know any idea what those numbers are today?
Well, yeah, they're exponentially increased from when I played, and they literally look at what they do is that part of the agent's job is to find out how much exact time, like the Coke logo on John Shannon's head while he plays, and they have a stopwatch in his exposure, and they calculate the time, and then they look at the ad value for 30 seconds, and they put some type of multiple on it for goodwill, and they determine a number. So
every ad agency has a group now, an analytics group that measures signage, T-shirts, time, airtime, rink, even signage on the golf course. Absolutely,
exactly. So in AT&T is always the highest rated PGA Tour, not including majors, but it's always because it has this celebrity factor and athlete factor, and people want to tune in, see these beautiful beaches, and while everyone else is snowbound, it's just a great utopia. So those numbers per tournament are determined by how many people watching.
All right. So what do you think it is? What do you think that number would be
Oh gosh,
for somebody? I don't want to go Tiger.
Well, here's how you go. You know, like they're talking about the money that they make on the PGA Tour. Patrick Cantlay, he made $7 million last year on the PGA Tour. PGA Tour earnings. He doubled that. He made 7.5. He made $15 million in total. So his endorsements, which kick in. So the rule of thumb, forget about Phil and Tiger. They're, you know, Tiger's way out there. But in my day as a journeyman player, and after I won, basically, I would double whatever you win on the PGA Tour, double it. And that goes for today too. So
well, then and the reason I ask this is because it raises this question. So Phil wants to go, and he's a Callaway guy. Phil wants to go and play on this Asian tour, who has, I mean, no North American television rights right now. Maybe they get them. How does Callaway feel about that? How does Callaway feel about Phil Mickelson's playing 10 or 12 weeks somewhere where nobody can see him, as opposed to, you know, being on a national network like the Golf Channel and NBC every week?
And you know what? That's a good question. And they will dig down to find out where their value is and pay appropriately. And keep in mind, Phil made, you know, he won the PGA last year, and other than that, he didn't play very well, but he made $44 million, I believe.
Yeah.
For last year. And so, you know, it's interesting. It's just so fascinating to see where he could go, because he has a clean slate right to the top of the television broadcasting. He went in there last year on CBS with Faldo in the booth, and he shined like a beautiful diamond for TV. Yeah. He could go straight into network television, CBS or NBC or whomever, and ask and get what he wants. Just no different than what Tony Romo gets for his telecast. And
that's $20 million. So.
Exactly. I think Phil can do that and do a better job than anyone has ever done as a former player on television.
You'd rather listen to him than Faldo?
Yes.
Boy, there's another Zokolism. We didn't need very much to hear about Sir Nick.
Or another word would be absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to talk about somebody else, because we've talked around him, but what the heck is Greg Norman doing? I mean, what is Greg Norman? This is not the first time we touched on that. What's Greg Norman's end goal in all of this?
Well, I think all athletes, including, you know, Phil on this, is when you have a little bit of runway left, and you can throw Gary Player in this as well, or have no runway, you miss being in the game and being on the white hot spotlight and having a say and having a voice. You know, you just, you know, look at the guys on the Champions Tour. They just fade off into the sunset. You don't hear from them. You go, what happened to Tom Watson and Hale Irwin and Ray Floyd? You don't hear of them. And I think, you know, athletes move on, and particularly golfers, I suppose, because they're independent contractors and they're used to having a voice. Tom Watson's used to having a voice in the game, and his voice was big. Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus. So I'm guessing that, you know, getting back in the game, even though the game isn't on the golf course, it's in business and it's in the industry.
Yeah. By the way, I just as a personal opinion, Bob talked about, well, they don't have any TV in North America. There's no point in launching this thing without TV in North America. That has to be the linchpin to, and something tells me.
It's not going to be the Golf Channel, John.
No, but something tells me this has FOX written all over it somehow, some way.
Well,
Mr. Murdoch,
I think
maybe.
Well, I think the television is going to go by the way of the dodo bird, and everything's going to be streaming.
Yeah, but we're not 100% there yet, Richard.
No, I know that.
We're not 100%. So you need to morph towards DAZN and Amazon and all, and you know, all of these new streaming services, but you need to get there, and you know, and so they need to bridge that gap.
Yes.
And Fox has enough channels. They have, you know, FS1, FS2.
Yeah, well,
they always need content.
You make a good point there, because the Aussie of Greg Norman, he's very close to Mr. Murdoch, another Aussie.
Yeah. To me, that's just this. And I mean, let's face it, Fox Sports went into the golf world with Greg Norman.
Yes.
And Chambers Bay.
And stumbled.
Dare I remind everybody of Chambers Bay? And they blew it.
They stumbled. Yes, they did.
And so you have to think that's why I ask about Norman is this just, I mean, just going at it. I mean, Tim Hortons took 5 franchises before he found donuts, you know. Are we seeing a similar thing with Greg Norman trying to find his niche within the media / golf world?
Yeah, well, he's got to find a partner. He's found a partner with a financial partner. You know, back in the 90s, with his financial partner was Rupert Murdoch, and now he's got another financial partner, and he's bringing a big stick, and he's getting traction. So it's going to be fascinating. I'm intrigued at it every day to see how it's going to come out.
Well, and I'm not here to defend Greg Norman by any stretch of the imagination, but it's fair to say this is not a fly by the seat of your pants kind of operation. He's been trying to do this for what, 20 years, Dick? Well,
it's been in the back of his mind for 20 years, I think, but it's, you know, the reality of the possibility has just been in the past couple of years. You know, and so I think he saw an opportunity, and it's something that is just lighting him up to no end, and it's going to accomplish a number of principles for him. You know, it's going to get him back in the game. It's going to make him, you know, in the game of golf. I mean, at the business level now, and the tour level, it picks off a number of important factors for him.
I also wonder about, you know, we're talking about sponsorship and specifically equipment. There are plenty of equipment companies in the Far East. Japan, I'm sure there's Chinese golf clubs. I don't know of any off the top of my head. Hanma is one that has kind of sort of emerged and opened up shop in North America, and they make pretty good equipment.
They make great equipment.
What does this do for them?
Well, I think that's where Greg is going. I mean, he's talking about the expansion into Asia and the Asian markets. These emerging markets are still untapped, and you know, China and you know, that whole.
Well, not Japan.
Japan's already, you know, drunk the Kool-Aid, and they're already established. But there's fresh markets in China, and that's the big one that I think can really benefit any tour.
I know. Well, you get the numbers. You get TV viewing numbers in China. You win the lottery.
Yeah.
You win the lottery. I mean, the Toronto Raptors have a package of basketball games and sponsorships in China. That they get 10 million viewers in China.
Yeah,
and that's a small number there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a small number there. We don't get 1 million people in Canada to watch the Raptors. So it puts in perspective a little bit of how big that market can be. Yeah.
One of the other things I wanted to mention with regard to this new tour, I don't know if you saw this, Dick, but there's I think a Scottish golf club that is being talked about as potentially being an Asian tour site. That must rankle Pelly and who are down at Wentworth, because the European Tour is headquartered just outside London.
There will be Asian Tour events in the United States, and I'm anticipating one will be in Canada as well.
Well, I will say this.
It has to be.
Yeah.
I will say this.
And then I think they're going to change the name from the Asian Tour to something else.
Yeah, well, and that probably would help. But I was on that bandwagon years ago. I tried to promote
a European tour.
The Canadian Open
moved
joining the European Tour.
Yeah, you bet. Yep. There was a lot of people. There was a lot of talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I had some serious conversations with people. Said, look at, you know, because that's when the PGA Tour of America had it on a crappy week where nobody came.
Oh yeah.
And
when it shifted to the Labor Day weekend and stayed there for 18 years. The Canadian Tour did a nosedive, or sorry, the Canadian Open did a nosedive.
yeah.
From a player perspective and a revenue perspective, it wasn't good. And again, and I always, in that time when you were getting that, I was always pointing the finger. It's Glen Abbey, and the players don't like Glen Abbey, and
some truth to that. I know.
Yeah, it sure was. It was my problem.
Yeah.
Really?
Well,
really?
Yep.
Why? What couldn't you hit on Glen Abbey? Yeah, but what do you mean?
Well, it's a Jack, like it lost guys like Tom Kite, Tom Watson, Ray Floyd. They didn't want to come back and ever play it. So Jack built during that era of architecture, Jack built a lot of golf courses that suited Jack. And they weren't necessarily, the players never really liked them. In most cases, sure, Memorial, Jack put his big shoulder behind it, but Glen Abbey was one of those golf courses that from the players' perspective, they didn't like it. And because of all the other issues, the crossing the border, it became a point where it was just a good week to take off.
And just when they say they didn't like it, was it too big? Was it unfair? What was it?
No, fairness in big, it wasn't too big. It wasn't too fair. The good players weren't given a competitive advantage like they would around Winged Foot or Pebble Beach. It was Jack built contrived golf courses, and they look good, but they don't appeal to the better players, generally speaking. Glen Abbey was one of those courses.
Well, and it's worth pointing out that Glen Abbey and Memorial, if they weren't his two first courses, they were two of his first courses.
That's correct.
And so you give a guy a bit of a break. But I'll tell you why I didn't like Glen Abbey, because there were too many holes where if I hit it 10 feet right of the pin, hole high, I walked up on the green, I was 40 feet away. Yeah. That's what pissed me off. And I know that wouldn't necessarily, well, I don't know. Did it make tour players angry?
Well, it's funny how, my very first Canadian Open was 1978, and I played, and Glen Abbey was one of the toughest golf courses on the tour at that time. Yeah. And I remember I shot 84 the first round, and it was a bugger of a golf course. And then, as it's turned out, the last few tournaments of Canadian Opens, RBC Canadian Opens that played there, I mean, the 18th hole, guys are hitting driver 9-iron to it, and it's a par 5.
Yeah.
So it's a completely different animal today. And it's just, and thank goodness RBC came in and brought in that ambassador team. Is that what I think was one of the best moves they've done to get name players up to Glen Abbey?
Right. Well, they had to pay for it.
Exactly. They paid for it.
That's the fees you're talking about, Bob, right. Through the back door.
But it's the private jets from the British Open.
Yeah.
They all have the private jets now.
But RBC used to send over, and I think still does.
Yes.
Send over the private jets so that they can finish the British Open on Sunday and get you.
Right. That's right. They do.
I mean,
that was the famous one with David Duval. David Duval came after being in Europe. I didn't play very well in Toronto. So
yeah, it's always a good excuse, and I think that's all it was a good excuse. With private jets and the money they're making, I mean, come on, jet lag, it comes with the territory. You can get over it and deal with it. So
indeed.
Lots to discuss. And I mean, what's intriguing about this, and I think you guys would agree, we don't know where this is going to land yet.
Right.
And this whole process is going to be really interesting to watch, whether you're a business guy or a golf guy or it's just a sports person in general. So
it is very real.
Oh, it is. And it isn't going to happen. It's happening as we speak.
Okay, so just one more question on it. Richard, you are the CEO of the new Saudi tour. Mm-hmm. You had one golfer to go get. Who would you get?
Well, Tiger.
He's not coming.
Yeah. So he said no. Then Rory.
Yeah.
He says no. Okay, I'm going. You just go right down the line. I go DeChambeau, Phil Mickelson.
So they're not doing they're doing it the right way in one way or another, right?
Sure. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, didn't they go after Bobby Hull? Wasn't he the number one guy back then when
World Hockey League? Yep.
World Hockey League? We gave him $1 million.
WHA, $1 million. Portage and Maine. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. You bring in the names that bring you the best ability to grow as fast as possible.
Well, we're going to talk about this more. I'm quite positive. When remains to be seen. Mr. Zokol, it's always our pleasure. We thank you for your time, and you have a great rest of the day. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Bob. Much appreciated.
Cheers.
Back after these messages. And we're back. McCowan, Shannon, no Zokol. We thank Richard for being with us.
When are we going to talk about your favorite sport?
Footy.
Yeah. I mean, now you are. I mean, I cannot. It is an 18-wheeler bandwagon in your driveway. 18-wheeler, baby.
You're misrepresenting. This entire thing. I am not a footy fan.
The president of the John Herdman fan club.
I'm a John Herdman fan, and I love this team.
Yes.
And I love this team because they represent our country. And if you can't get behind something that represents somebody or a group that represents your country, then what kind of a ding dong are you?
Yeah. No, hey, listen.
And they have captured my imagination.
They are fun.
Well, once again, they were shorthanded last night, and partly deliberately. Their best player didn't play again. And they sat a bunch of guys who would normally have been in the starting lineup and didn't substitute them in until about the 52, 53 minute mark of the game. Yeah. And of course, just like that, Canada scores, although it was a bizarre goal.
Yes.
And I mean, you're not going to see a crazier goal than that, I don't think. And then in hockey terms, another breakaway. Yeah. You're not supposed to have breakaways in soccer, are you?
No, but that's 2 games in a row.
Breakaways.
Yeah.
This is a Canadian thing.
And
Davis pops one in, and Canada wins 2-0, and now we're on the verge of clinching.
Yeah, and just for the record, there was almost 1 million people watching on Sunday against the Americans on Sunday afternoon, 970,000. And last night's soccer game was the number 1 sporting viewing event in our country ahead of the Olympics, ahead of the national NHL game that was on Sportsnet. It was the soccer game.
Well, you sound like this is like an epic moment.
I think it's important.
It's logical. This is one of a zillion NHL games that nobody should give a flying fadoo about. It's what was on for the Olympics last night. Was it opening ceremony?
Curling.
Oh, curling.
Curling's big.
Yeah, but it's on opposite other curling on TSN.
Yeah, that is true.
You know, let them fight over the audience. At the end of the day, if you told me before last night's game that the soccer game would be number 1, I would have said, of course it would. Yeah. And so it was proven accurate. Not a very good performance by Team Canada, I thought, once again, but slightly undermanned, partly out of necessity, partly out of the fact that guys are pooped. Yeah. Partly out of playing 3 games in 7 days, which you shouldn't have to do.
Well, but you have to do it because of all the professional leagues around the world. You have to have these international windows, right?
I get it. Okay. I get why, and I'm not here to debate the relative merit of that. But if, in terms of fairness and quality, it wasn't a very well played game. Let me put it that way.
No, but and then we had this discussion about the Honduras game as well. You do wonder if they play to the standard of the opposition in the end. They have enough talent to get. Yeah. I think that's. I do. They're scrappy enough that they can adapt enough to still get their scoring opportunities and create your own luck.
I can't even imagine what it must be like to go from like -20 to +30 in temperature in the space of 3 days and play games under both circumstances.
Everybody's got a cold today.
Well, I don't even know how to describe what that would feel like. I can imagine it might be problematic, but then again, maybe it was great. Maybe they were going, oh God, thank God, I haven't warmed up. It took me 3 days to warm up.
Well, we're that much closer, right?
But not
much closer.
Well, to qualifying.
Sure.
Well, that's what happens, John, when you win. Is you get closer.
No, well, they get closer. Yeah, they didn't. Yes. They didn't win though.
So they're now a point away, I think.
Yes,
I think that's basically how it goes. And look, after the U.S. game, I think we pretty much felt like, okay, it's in the bag now, barring a complete and total collapse. What remains to be seen now. Who do they get next? Costa Rica.
Yes.
So if they qualify against Costa Rica, they have 2 games left, which would be effectively meaningless. In other words, they would qualify no matter what. And it raises the question once again, and I asked you about this the other day. How seriously do these guys want to finish first in CONCACAF?
I think, I mean, I know that it doesn't really affect the draw.
It's a blind draw, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So, but the question then becomes, I was thinking actually from the other side, is if whoever you play, will it affect who is 2, 3, and 4, and the other qualifiers, and the team that has to play against Oceania in that play-in game? That to me is, do you want to affect that part? Do you want to create? I mean, yeah.
It raises a question for me as to whether who do you play? Maybe you just get 11 guys off the street to play the last 2 games because you don't care. Why take chances with injuries and put players through more than that you have to, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is yet to come, and that's a ways away. We got to wait till late March to.
And maybe we're lucky and get our pal Herdman back before that. So
I'm sure he'll be as happy or happier the next time as he was the last time. We got to get out of here. Time is our enemy.
Jim Rutherford tomorrow.
The president of the Vancouver Canucks. We hope you'll join us for that. Thanks for watching or listening, as the case may be. For John Shannon, Bob McCowan, see ya.